And we're live. Welcome back to the Doomer Bloomer podcast with Will Nemo. We are talking about the hero's journey, people's doomer to bloomer cycles, people who have been through the ringer of life, come back the other side, changed person with new perspectives and stories to share. Today on the podcast, I have a gentleman named Len May, and he went from being homeless to starting his own uh, cannabis health industry business. A true success story. On that note, I'm just gonna let Len introduce himself. How are you doing today, Len?
I'm great, Will. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. I noticed a lot of the albums in your studio there, the Eagles, and I see uh, some books, Amy Winehouse. Just uh, just take it pretty much from the beginning. I read on your profile that you were were homeless, and then tell me how that, like, I've never been homeless, so it's kind of hard for me to relate, but like how did that come about?
So I'll take you back a little further to give you some context. I was the kind of kid that was sitting in class. So I'm an immigrant. I was born in a country called Lithuania, and I came to the U.S. with my parents when I was like 6 years old. I grew up in Philadelphia, and when I was a kid, I would sit in class, and a teacher would call on me, and my mind would be elsewhere. I really was floating, and I became disruptive after a while because I was sort of bored. Uh, and I was diagnosed with ADD, I guess, without being hyperactive when I was in my teens, maybe around 14 or so. And I was put on prescription medication. And I can't say it didn't work for me. Depends how you define work. I mean, I think I could focus, but it took away my sense of self, my connection to my emotional self. So I was going to school and I was hanging out. There's some older kids, and they asked me if I want to smoke a cigarette. I said, "Yeah, sure. I mean, it's cool. I'll smoke a cigarette with the older kids. That's the cool thing to do." I never questioned why they had one cigarette. So they had one cigarette. They passed around. It was like four of us, I think. It got to me. I took a drag. Didn't taste like a cigarette that I tasted before, and so I took another drag, maybe cough. And they were laughing at me, like, "What's up?" And they put cannabis in the cigarette. So when I went back to class, the windows that were all over open, like like your browser windows, they sort of uh, narrowed, and I could focus. And that sort of became my go-to medicine. I got rid of all the other medication. I started consuming cannabis. I never told anybody it was medicine because, first of all, it was illegal. I never thought about it as medicine at that time. And my parents would catch me over the years. When I was in my late teens, I think like senior high school, uh, I was asleep. My parents, I had these conversations with my dad. It's like, "Don't bring it in the house. Don't bring it in the house." I'm like, okay. So I would leave it at like a little pouch underneath my seat in my car. And I had like a little bit of cannabis and maybe some pipe, whatever, rolling papers. So I come downstairs and my parents are sitting there with my pouch on the kitchen table, and they're like, "Oh," and I said, "You went in my car." And so I told you not to bring it in the house. I said it wasn't in the house. It was in the car, but it's still my property. Back and forth, back and forth. So what are we going to do with you? And I said, "What do you mean? There's nothing wrong with me." So my parents were like, "What if we call the cops? What's going to happen?" So nothing's going to happen. It's not a big deal. So they called cops, and two female officers came over. They threw out my cannabis, and "Oh, we'll take you in." I'm like, "All right, we'll take me in." So they ended up not, because it was a misdemeanor. There was nothing major there. But the one woman said, "If it was my kid, I'd kick him to the curb." And when they left, my dad said, "You have 5 minutes to get your shit." So I went to grab a suitcase, probably some clothes in there. I had a car, a little bit of money, maybe a few $100s. And I went to, so I'm just going to define homeless, what that really means. I didn't have a tent. I didn't sleep on the street. I slept in motel rooms for a while. So that was my that was being homeless, like hourly motel rooms. I would sleep with my clothes on top of the on top of the covers. Then I was dating this girl. She let me crash at her house for a while, and then her parents I have to go. So I would couch serve for different friends, and over time the parents would say you have to. So my grandmother allowed me to stay on her couch after I went through all the friends, and then you were speaking about my records, my music. So I was a big music person, and I finished high school and started, wanted to go to college, and I started university, Temple University, and I would go to this record store called Tower Records. For old heads, they probably remember Tower Records, and they're opening for a cashier. So I got a job as a cashier. My grandmother gave me the security deposit money that I needed for an apartment, so I got my own apartment, and it was just a really big shithole in the basement of this building. And every time there would rain, my apartment would flood. So they come to the office, they would shop vac the water, but it still smelled like mold because all underneath the carpet were all rotting out. Every single kind of roach you could possibly imagine. And yeah, so that was sort of my homeless kind of experience. So that's what I kind of frame and define it correctly for your audience.
No, yeah, and I guess those are fairly formative memories for you. Myself, growing up in Canada, relatively conservative background as well. I probably wasn't as privy to what legalized and decriminalized marijuana would look like. To me, it wasn't really a part of my life. I kind of do recognize the ADD portion of it. It's, I guess it's something that afflicted you early on. And I also recognize being put on medication that disassociates you from who you are as a person. So, do those early formative experiences, and then ultimately moving in with your grandmother, going to university, did that start steering you towards being an entrepreneur, like not being part of the regular normal crowd of people? I guess I would put it. I don't know how to like.
Well, so there's a couple of things you said there. First of all, I want to talk about ADD in general. So
Mhm.
we label people with disorders. You have a disorder. When you have a disorder, that means that the perception that there's something wrong with you. And ADD should not be a disorder. It can be a superpower for some people. What it really means is that I'm born with depletion of dopamine. So because I'm not producing enough of my own dopamine, I'm looking for that stimulation of dopamine hits from exogenous external stimuli. So if I'm actually getting a hit of dopamine, that's why people with ADD or ADHD, they have these scroll moments where you can't focus. You'll go to the next one, because my brain is always looking for the next hit of dopamine. When I'm sitting in class and I'm not paying attention, that means that I'm not stimulated. The subject is not interesting, so I'm not producing enough dopamine. So I'm constantly, I'm tuning out because I'm looking for that dopamine. Or we're really so there's a dependence of dopamine. A lot of drugs, exogenous drugs that are produced, they bind to our dopamine receptors and squirt dopamine, like cocaine, for instance. So when I had these scroll moments, I'm always looking for the next hit of dopamine. Now, if you know how to utilize that as a superpower, you have the unique ability to multitask effectively, which most people focus on one thing. And the other thing that I have a unique ability of doing is hyper focusing. So, hyper focusing on the right thing is all superpower. So, I'll give you an example. Video games are designed for a lot of stimulation of dopamine. So, kids that have ADD or ADHD, they sit there for 8 hours a day playing video games because it's constantly feeding that stimulation of dopamine. But if you can channel that into something that's more, I'm not saying negative positive, but something is a bigger contribution to the greater good, now you can utilize that same hyper focus and do something else. So for me, as an example, I would paint. So an oil paint, I can sit in the studio for 6, 7 hours. It doesn't feel like I'm there all day because I'm so hyper focused because I have this exchange. As I'm doing something, I'm getting dopamine. As I'm doing something, forces that. And when that happens is the time goes by, but I can hyper focus. So that's sort of the superpower of ADD. It doesn't have to be labeled as a disorder. There's a lot of things that people kind of label with these diseases, and it really is not the case. So you got to frame it correctly. So the whole entrepreneurial thing, once you know that you have this sort of framework of when I was growing up, I wanted to be so music was my thing, and it was my solace. I grew up in a very abusive household. My dad was abusive to me, so my room was my sanctuary. I couldn't sleep at night, so I would just I'm old, so I had this little boombox and I had this cassette recorder, and I would put up to the speaker, and I would start making mixtapes, and I would cut the cassettes and make them with tape, and I would write down the songs, and that was my thing. It was my hobby. So I didn't know what that led to, and I really wanted to do some music. So I discovered like these music producers, like people like Rick Rubin, for instance, who wasn't a musician per se, but he was an influence in music, and I wanted to do that for my career. And my parents actually called in a psychiatrist and had an intervention for me. And they said, if you are going to go to school, you need a steady job. And they convinced me at that time when I was going through my figuring out what I want to do, they convinced me to be a physical therapist. It's going to be a steady job. So when I went to school, I went to physical therapy school. That was my goal. Now, the one thing that my dad told me when the internet first started, this is before like any of the like Yahoos or anything else. We had this Mozilla browser, the way back in the day, I would say late 80s, maybe 88, 87, something like that. But my dad's like, if you can ever get into this internet thing, I think it's going to be huge. So while I was going to physical therapy school, I I was friends with this guy, and he's like, hey, my brother has this company. He doesn't know what to do with it. He's really, all he does is sit in his attic, order pizza, drink coffee, smoke cigarettes, but he programs on this thing called X Windows. Talk to him. I don't know. So I met with his brother, and he was making sort of these websites, but they were really, really early. And said, this is kind of cool. What are you trying to do with this? He's like, well, I want to build this and maybe have people build this virtual mall for people. So, well, how are you selling it? He's like, I have no idea. So long story, a little bit longer, we became partners. And while I was going to physical therapy school, I opened up a company that did these websites, and it was called Future World. And I would go after school, I would go to meet like small businesses with a black and white 96 broadband modem laptop, and I would explain to people, this is what your website can look like. It's just a page in a virtual mall. This is your email. So I got the entrepreneurial bug at that time and ended up at some point exiting that company, then doing something in music. Also, that was an interesting time. It wasn't really a fruitful venture with music at the time because of the transition to the music industry. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my ex-wife, she said, you have to get a real job. So I went to work got a job at Price Waterhouse, which was at the time the Big Six consulting company. It was a management consulting side. Then they merged with Cooper, so it was PwC. Then I went to work for a venture capital company. The point of this whole thing is I'm a seeker. So I'm always on this journey to try to figure out what I'm here for, what my purpose is, but also I tend to not sit in a place that's not fulfilling for a long period of time, even if it's financially lucrative to me, because I'm always trying to find that fit. What is my purpose? What am I contributing and what am I receiving? So, went to work for a venture capital company. Then I decided that I want to do real estate. So I became a real estate agent, left my job, was making really good money. Real estate wasn't at first, but then I did really well. I was the managing director of a company called Keller Williams Commercial. So I was very financially successful, if you can define it that way, in real estate. My ex-wife was an actress. So real estate is an entrepreneurial venture. Also, you have to do a lot of different things. I had a big team that was working with me, but I'm in Philly. We were going back and forth to LA, and then I remember she had this meeting with his director, and she came out crying. And he told her that if she really is serious about acting, she has to be in LA. It's pretty obvious, but at that time there was a lot of New York actors, and that's what she was trying to do. So I said, okay, we'll move. And a year later, basically, we ended up moving to LA. Well, I moved them out here, my daughter and my ex-wife, and then for a year I was going back and forth, wrapped up my business. Didn't know what I was going to do. California is not a reciprocal state for real estate with Pennsylvania, but I was known for real estate. So I was sitting in a real estate office in LA and just sort of consulting. And these guys walked in, they want to open up an alternative pharmacy. And the person that was helping them, he's like, I don't really understand what these guys want. They're being really cryptic. Talk to them. So I asked them what they want to do, alternative pharmacy. And then ended up they wanted to open up a dispensary. So I said, okay, where's all your paperwork? You have to be compliant with Prop 215, SB 420. They didn't have any of that stuff. So I helped them. And once I did, we got a place and they offered me a partnership. So we ended up opening 4 more dispensaries under the same brand. And the entrepreneurial story continues, but also this curiosity. And it could be ADD, could be just my curious mind, where I started noticing 2 people will consume the same exact chemical variety of cannabis and have a completely different experience. And in that, I was just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna try to see what I can find. Why is this happening? And my AD kicked in. I hyper focused and I started trying to find out why this is happening. So I came across a video by a guy named Kevin McKernan, who was one of the first people who genetically sequenced the plant itself. And I started reaching out to him. So I was told that Kevin has 30 minutes. I'm in LA. He's in San Francisco to meet with me. So I got a plane, flew to San Francisco, met with him for 3 hours. And he was like, we have to do something together, come on board, which I did eventually as a consultant. And this company was called Medicinal Genomics. And my job basically was to go around the US, a little bit of Canada as well, meet with the top cultivators, get plant material from them, bring it to my lab, extract the DNA, and sequence it. So we created the first genetic library of chemical varieties, chemovars and cultivars of cannabis, and it's called Cannapedia with a K, and we put it on the blockchain, so there's a chain of custody for each one. So I learned a lot about extraction of DNA and genetics on that side. But the parent company of Medicinal Genomics was called Cortigen Life Sciences, and they did pharmacogenomics, which is the study of how drugs affect individual body and also drug interactions between each other, which is really, some of them are inducers, some of them are inhibitors. So that's, your pharmacist probably knows that as well. So I got really into the human genetics side, and my light bulb moment was one day I said, well, we have plant genetics here, we have human genetics here. Let's bring those 2 together and guide people to a personalized experience so they can avoid an adverse event. They really didn't have any interest in it. They closed down the human side. So in 2017, I formed EndoDNA and was able to bring some scientists with me. And that was my first foray into that business of precision health and wellness. And when we met with the FDA, they asked us, what is the purpose of your test? And we said to help people either avoid or mitigate a possible adverse event. So that was the overall concept of the company initially when we started. And we got a patents on our first patent that we received was on the use of DNA to make recommendations associated with the endocannabinoid system. And then we expanded from there to do more to help healthcare professionals use our platform for precision health wellness for things like perimenopause, menopause, female hormone health, male hormone health. We have a nutrigenomic report for personalized supplements, vitamins, nutrients, skin. So you have personalized healthcare. But the overall goal is to build the world's largest database on efficacy. And we use machine learning. We have a patent on that too, to help guide health professionals so they can make informed decisions and more personalized decisions to help treat their patients. And that's sort of the trajectory, with skipping a lot of ups and downs, but that's where we are today.
Sounds like you're a polymath. It doesn't sound like you're just content to live in one discipline,
Dude,
which is
it's so mind blowing that you just said that. I was doing a talk yesterday to a big training with a very large company. The guy that introduced me said, I'm a polymath. I'm reading that book, by the way. And he's also said he's a polymath autodidactic. I've never heard that before either. It's so funny that you brought that up.
autodidactic is near photographic memory, right?
Well, this is what was explained to me, and there's different definitions of it. If you're a polymath, you're basically sponging up different things and learning different things from different people or books, etc. But a autodidactic polymath masters those things to a certain level, like a Leonardo da Vinci, for instance. I have no idea. I've never even heard that term before. So I'm not sure if I'm a master, but I'll tell you what I really found as my superpower. If I'm really interested in something, it becomes almost obsessive. And I think one of the things that I've had a tendency to do really well is take really complex scientific information, for instance, and be able to regurgitate that and explain it in the way that I would understand it to, like, a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. So I don't know what that means because it's a new terminology for me, but I've always been able to do that.
Well, I find the way you talk is extremely relatable because I'm also a polymath, or I consider myself one. There's for me, there's never an end to learning anything. Learning has always just been a part of my life. But I was also the same person like you that I didn't learn very well sitting in a classroom, having someone else feed me the information. If I want to learn something, I just do a quick search, find the resources, and then within 48 to 72 hours, I'm a relative expert on topic. And for me, that's led me from mastering languages to computer programming to being a self taught engineer. So, and if I don't know somebody, I'm like you, I'm going to seek out somebody with the information that I don't have. I'm going to get their knowledge downloaded into me, and then I'm going to at least have a cursory understanding of what they're talking about. And that's just been me my entire life. So,
Yeah, I've always sort of said I hate to study, but I love to
mhm.
learn. Even like my daughter makes fun of me, like, you watch these weird shows on TV. I'm like, I love to watch experts. Somebody that takes a piece of leather and makes something out of it that I don't know how to make. I'm just infatuated by that. I'm like, holy shit, I'm learning this stuff. I'm not sure I'm going to actually do it, but now I understand how that's done, and that's the thing that like is really attractive to me. That's how I learn. Very similar to what you're saying.
Yeah, and then to also, to become a consultant and have multiple exits from different fields. And I'm sure being divorced probably isn't or hasn't been that easy, and I can't relate in that regard. But it sounds like you've merged, especially with Endocana, a lot of these interdisparate disciplines into something that is kind of your own creation. If that does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right, and it's this notion of trying to figure out still where I can make the most contribution. And I fool myself sometimes. I'll tell you about divorce too, since you brought it up. I fooled myself, and I fooled myself many times with believing that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So just because you're really good at something and you're mastering something, that doesn't mean that it's fulfilling to you, and that's what you need to do. So the belief, and I've had this conversation with so many people, you're an expert. This is what you're supposed to be doing because you're an expert. You're great at real estate. Well, I get fulfilled. It's like a hit of heroin, right? So when you do the transaction feels good. You got that hit of heroin. Then after the fact, you're like, Now I have to do it all over again. And I've heard elite athletes talk about this. So I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan for American football. And I heard some of the elite athletes and the team say after they just won the Super Bowl, the journey of getting there, they felt relief. They weren't even happy. They were happy for like a minute, but now they're like, let's go out and do this again. It wasn't like a fulfilling thing. The journey of it was fulfilling. So for me, when I get that transaction, after a while, I started thinking, well, it's all money. So my connection to that was a transactionary connection. But what am I actually contributing? So I'm making wealthy people more wealthy because I'm providing them commercial real estate, or I'm helping a business owner. Maybe I didn't look at it in the same way that I can look at it in hindsight. But after a while, it became tiring. Like it was just, I don't know what I'm contributing to the world. And I'm always looking for things to do that make a greater contribution outside of myself. So, you know, when I came to this country, in the first year of us being here, I think in the first year, my grandfather, because I came with my parents and my mom's parents, my grandfather had a stroke and he proceeded to have multiple strokes. And he was tall and very large gentleman. My grandmother was a really small lady, and she had to like sort of drag him around. He sort of lost his ability to speak. And I'll never forget this image of my grandmother and my mom sitting with bags of pharmaceuticals. And they, with the doctors, trying to adjust his medications, and the interaction between the medications caused him to have this condition. And now he's got to get side effects of this. And it was just ongoing. So I was always kind of scared of that stuff. And I was always scared of medication because I always saw what happened to my grandfather. I was like, I never understood this notion. You go to the doctor, and I'm kind of being a little facetious when I say this, but they say, take two of these and call me in the morning. Why is it two? Why are they telling me to take two? Why is it not four? Why is it not one? Why is it two? Well, when they do clinical trials, it's sort of find the average, but the average is not me, plus 25% at least of clinical trials are placebo. So I wanted to figure out a way, how can we give people the tools to help themselves? And then during COVID, I was like, well, maybe it's more than just helping themselves. Maybe it's collaborating with a healthcare professional. Maybe it's like being in partnership with your doctor for your own health and wellness. And what can we do to help a healthcare professional be more informed about the individual? So let's collaborate. The doctor has many patients, but I'm my most important patient. So what can we do? So transparently, we can do a whole genome. So now that I know my DNA, my genetics, and the doctor knows my genetics, now we know where my own personal potholes are in my own road. So I look at it as a GPS of life. But just because you know your genetic predispositions, now what do you do about that? So the doing about that is the ability to turn on and off epigenetic expression based on lifestyle choices and changes. And I can go into some of that if you would like. I just don't want to get too sciencey. So you let me, where you want me to kind of cut off. But the idea is that once you have your genome, now you can personalize treatment protocol specific to the individual. And then you can measure how well that protocol, how well that treatment plan works for the individual by utilizing other tests for epigenetic, what's been turned on and what's been turned off. So think of your genetics that you got 50% from your mother and father as a circuit breaker box. Bunch of circuit breakers with on-off switches. Some of them are already in the on position. So born early, our skin color, our hair color, our eye color, things of that nature. Some of those we're predisposed to. The programming is there, but our lifestyle can turn those switches on or off. So things like nutrition. So what we put in our bodies, the food that we eat, it can turn on or off our genetic predispositions to make it epigenetic expression. What else? Exposure to heavy metals, exposure to pesticides, exposure to other things like that, that can affect it. And our own neurochemistry. And what I mean by that is if we're prone to a lot of stress reactivity, that cortisol can actually turn on epigenetic expression, dopamine, other neurochemicals that we produce ourselves. So being able to bookend that experience. And now with AI and machine learning, we can get that feedback back to the cloud. The AI can tell, hey, Dr. Smith, Will is similar to 100 other people with similar genetics that took this protocol and showed efficacious. So this would be a suggestion that's more personalized. It's not individualized because it didn't learn from you, but it's personalized based on previous information that we feed into the algorithm. They can say this is more efficacious based on that information. And that's sort of the approach to precision health and wellness we're taking.
Well, you're sounding like we're getting away from the Rockefeller model of medicine and moving towards a more enlightened feedback system. I mean, treating tre- treating this well, we've proven treating symptoms don't work, and pharmacologically doping people up based upon so-called experts' results don't work. You're talking more of getting back to or a personalized. So, like, I was going to ask is like, so I live in Canada, and you said this Endocanna. If I sent you just like I don't know, a 23andMe sample, how does the process work with your company?
So we're a global company. We are. We used to be a direct to consumer company. So we would, so the company, we're EndoDNA. The Endocanna is the cannabinoid test that we have, but we started a corporation, with the endocannabinoid system test. So Endocanna Health Inc., DBA, EndoDNA. So we're under EndoDNA. Our website is EndoDNA because Endocanna Health, what that did, pigeonholed us in the cannabis space. And what happened was we would get shadow banned everywhere, even though we're not a cannabis company. And it's hard to explain to the algorithm that we all have an endocannabinoid system. I can go into that if you want as well. So we went under EndoDNA as sort of our brand, our name, and we shifted over to from a direct to consumer model to a business to business model where we empower healthcare professionals. Like I said, we're a global company, but we do still under the Endocanna Health brand, we do still sell an endocannabinoid system test. So you can go on the website, buy a test. It'll get mailed to Canada. You'll swab the inside of your cheek. We're HIPAA, we're GDPR compliant, so the data is de-identified. You would then send the sample back to our lab. You log into your portal where you register and you would have your results, and it takes you to product suggestions and gives you your sort of secret sauce of your cannabinoid and terpene profiles, shows you drug to drug interactions, gives you your metabolic function for dosing, how you should dose based on how you metabolize. So all that exists. And as you said, if you have a 23andMe or you have an ancestry.com or my family DNA, any of those, you can take the raw data from that test. You can upload it to, you can buy the upload it to our site, and within 24 hours, you can log in and get your results as well. We're only as good as the gene, or what's called the SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, that they use, but we have 50 or so percent coverage. But there's a difference in price. So like the endocannabinoid system test, the Endocanna Health test, it retails for $199. But the raw data upload is $49.95. So there's a pretty big difference between uploading raw data. But our goal as EndoDNA is to provide these to healthcare professionals around the world. And that's what we do now. So the idea is it would be clinic. So we have this menopause biotype test that looks at predispositions to female hormone health. So I got a call from Dr. Jennifer Berman, who's one of the top female hormone health doctors in the US, maybe even the world. She was on Oprah, Dr. Phil, all these other, she was in the show called The Doctors. But she said there's two things that I started seeing with my patients. Number one is I see young women, late 20s, early 30s, that are starting to experience perimenopause symptoms. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the hormones that's in our foods and our water, etc. And also, women are expressing a lot of side effects from menopause symptoms like hot flash severity, sleep challenges, all these different things. said, is there a way that we may be able to get in front or ahead of these things before they express themselves? So we create this menopause biotype test that we empower healthcare professionals by having this, in-house in our clinics. They can swab women, and we have an andropause test from male hormone health as well. They can swab women and know in advance that they may have a predisposition to some of these things. And it looks at their open and possibility to get a benefit or hormone optimization. So now they can be prescribed their specific bioidentical hormones that are specific to them. Also, there are also things like specific nutrients and supplements and other things that are specific to the individual to mitigate the expression of those epigenetic predispositions, or if they're already experiencing them. Remember, I said on off switches. So some of them we may be able to turn off. So that's what we're doing now, approaching healthcare professionals and empowering them to have their test white labeled under their brand inside. And one of the things that you brought, and since you're in Canada, it's a little bit different, but you mentioned this, and I want to kind of emphasize because you're right on this. It's sick care versus health care. We've been part of the system that's associated with sick care. We're very, very good at identifying what hurts and being able to address what hurts. Now, what hurts to me is a symptom. If you have pain, if I have pain in my elbow, I have the opportunity to take an analgesic to block the pain or to get a shot that'll block the pain. However, what's causing this pain to begin with? What if I said, maybe this is not anything you did to your elbow? Maybe it has to do that you have a predisposition to stress reactivity and you are secreting a tremendous amount of cortisol, not producing enough of what's called anandamide, which is an endogenous endocannabinoid, to be able to get you back to homeostasis. So you're always in fight or flight. That cortisol level lowered your pH level, made you more acidic. Your immune system is creating a cytokine, an overactive immune response that's creating inflammation in your joints. Now that you have inflammation in your joints, your ankles, knees, neck, back, elbow hurts. That is a symptom of something else that's going on. And your doctor is giving you a shot in that. It's blocking the pain of the symptom without actually treating the root cause of that. And that's the system. And in Canada, it's different because you have a different type of medical system. But in the United States, it's an insurance-based system. So the insurance-based system is not incentivized to cure. It's not incentivized to look to address a symptom before, to address the root cause of a symptom. It's incentivized to get you in and out really quickly, to put you prescription medications that may create side effects that they have other prescription medication for. So they're treating the symptom without curing the root cause. And that's the system that needs to be changed. And that's the uphill battle. The combination of Eastern and Western medicine, because we do a fantastic job at diagnostics, but the combination of Eastern medicine to actually look at the root cause. I used to have my doctor, Dr. Chen, who's a DO and a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. When I would come to her, the approach is completely different. There's 2 pulses in her wrist that she would check. She would check my tongue, always yell at me for brushing my tongue because it tells her a lot. But something's happening. She goes, oh, well, that's happening from your kidneys. And we have to address your kidneys. I'm like, yeah, but I think it's bronchitis. She's like, that's the symptom that it's expressing because something's going on in your kidney. So that is the combination that we want to start looking at to start preventing some of these symptoms and change the mindset of this, Western sick care into health span, longevity. I mean, we talk about longevity. This is the new hot topic, right? But who the hell wants to live the last 20 years of their life when they're sick? So you don't want to just live longer. You want to live longer in a healthy way. So you want to talk about health span versus lifespan and start addressing things that may be problems later on in our life if we're going to live longer, because it's going to happen. We're already living longer, but we don't want to, quality of life is extremely important. And those are the things that we're trying to address.
Well, and I just want to bring it back to what you said a little bit earlier is that you've been on this path, the hero's journey, the doomer to bloomer cycle, whatever you want to call it. You sound extremely passionate, and it sounds like you're coming from a place of service rather than a place of, and and I feel like in this economy, in this world, that's a rarity nowadays. I think people, or from my perception of things, are doing things because they have to, not because they want to. This is you actually solving real problems for people in the world, flipping the script the way healthcare has been done for 100 years, realistically. And my question to you is, where do you see yourself in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Like you talk about health, wellness, where does endocan or where does endo DNA, like it's 2025, but you want to project this legacy farther, I'm assuming. So what does that look like for you?
Well, I appreciate you saying this whole thing with passion, and I want to go back to divorce. So
Hmm.
I want to get people to understand one thing, that growth is on the other side of pain. So you have to experience something, and this is what I struggle with. And I struggle with this notion of I can do something for money. I can do something because when I went through my divorce, it was an extremely painful experience all the way. I've never experienced anything that made me feel depressed. And I'm not a person that's depressed. I made bad decisions during that time. I was numb. I was trying to figure things out, and I was doing like odd jobs here and there. And that was the moment when you're darkest, when the light starts coming up for you. And I just want people to understand that sometimes you have to go through the struggle and the pain to come out the other side and figure out your purpose. And being a polymath, as you are, I can do a lot of different things. I can be great at a lot of different things. And this isn't an ego thing. It's just because I'm so interested, like I get fed by learning. Like this is what people need to understand. It just part of my diet, right? What I eat. And I have to learn. I have to do this all the time. So I can be good at different things, but the fulfillment part doesn't produce the passion. And when you don't have the passion, you don't have the neurochemistry to anchor that passion into the hard times, because being an entrepreneur is hard as shit. I don't know if you curse on your podcast. I'm not sure, but
100%
yeah,
curse. Go right ahead.
it's fucking hard. So you're alone on an island, especially when you are doing something that's innovative. When I first started doing this and explaining to people, are like, personalized weed. I'm like, no, you have an endocannabinoid system. What is that? And I had to explain to people, and it's difficult. But I remember you're a Canadian, so I'll do a Gretzky quote. They asked him, how do you score all these goals? And he said, I skate where the puck is going to be. So that's been my mentality. I'm not, yes, success leaves clues and there's a breadcrumb trail. However, if somebody has been on an island before, it's possible you can be on an island. It's lonely on an island, but eventually, the tide's going to catch up with you. So, to go back and answer your question about where I see myself or where I see the company, my vision is very, very broad and large. So the vision is to have the world's largest database on efficacy or for efficacy. That's it. So the more data that we collect all over the world, the more the AI is going to be able to help healthcare professionals make those personalized decisions for you, for me, for everybody's health span. What that leads to, I don't know. I never went into this. People, investors have been asking, what's your exit? Are you going public? I don't know what the exit per se is, but I may be at some point say, I no longer want to do this. I've served enough. I can hand the reins over to somebody else and have somebody else do this. Maybe I'll go paint, or maybe I'll start something else. But as long as I'm in service and I contribute positively in the world for the greater good, that connects to me. And when it connects to your heart and it anchors in emotion, it helps you get over those tough areas, like experiencing that pain and across different things in life, being kicked out of my house. By the way, I have an incredible relationship with my parents. I just want to say I speak to my dad every day. All that changed, holding on to anger and all that stuff, that just like a slow poison in me, so I let that shit go a long time ago, and it really helped a lot. I'm still working through it with my ex-wife. I mean, we're okay, but well, when you're writing that check every month, there is an anchoring to a feeling that you want to sort of overcome. But the point I'm trying to make is, always, if you can figure out how you can make a contribution that's greater than yourself, it'll carry you past those things, even though you may not be making the money that you feel that you should. You're not making the money that you feel you should in the moment. It's only a moment. It'll change over time if you keep following that path and still checking with yourself. Am I still making a contribution? Am I still helping people? And I'll tell you one story. I don't get a chance to speak to quote unquote patients, customers, patients, as much as I used to, but I got invited to speak at this conference in Brazil, and there was a line of people that were standing there, and there was a girl in a wheelchair, and her mom, in Portuguese, through a translator, she said she's so on the spectrum, she's got a bunch of conditions. If you look at her in the eyes, her eyes wouldn't be able to focus. She would not be verbal. She couldn't speak, just make some noises. It was just an absentee, child. And she said by doing the DNA test and getting the personalized protocol, she was able to communicate with her child. And they were thanking me. And then there was other people that were standing there. And that reminder of why I'm doing this is that when you have that interaction with people that you're saying you've helped these people, it sort of helps you. It instead of pushing through things, it helps to pull you over those humps that have come up in the entrepreneurial journey.
And I mean, one last question before I wrap this podcast up, because you're a super inspiring guy. Like, I learned so much in the last 40 minutes. But if you were to give one piece of advice to somebody who is in the doomer bloomer spiral cycle, or is an entrepreneur, or wants to be an entrepreneur, any of the above, right? Because, like you said, the one thing that just brought me back is like a moment is just a moment. Things aren't forever. But like, soundbite advice, what would you tell that person that's on the verge, doesn't want to be here, is still in that doomer mindset, but really needs the help out? What would you tell that person?
I mean, it's the whole, I'm not a religious kind of person, but this too shall pass kind of thing is always resonating in my every single thing. I try not to get too high and too low. Your highs, your wins are going to come, but on the other side, you may have a loss. And if you allow your external environment to control your internal sense of self, then you're going to allow other people and other factors to control how you are. Always work on yourself. Personal development is a life's journey. And it doesn't matter what's going on the outside. It's what's going on the inside that matters most. And if you have these dark moments, reach out. Don't sit there yourself. Talk to people and understand that the dark is going to pass just like the light is going to pass. If like I use an analogy of sports and football, you have to forget the last play. You either caught the ball and scored a touchdown, wonderful. You have to get out there and do it again, or you drop the ball and you lost the game. You still have to shake it off and go out there and do it again. So don't get too high on the touchdowns. Don't get too low on the drop passes, because there's always next play coming up. So be ready for it.
Right on. If our listeners want to connect with you, EndoDNA or any other projects that you're working on, where would be the best place to find you online or in the world, wherever your socials hang out?
Yeah, so endodna.com is the company. My social is Len May on, I think on Instagram, I'm Len May DNA, Lenmay. So I'm very accessible, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, all that stuff. TikTok, the only thing I do on TikTok is I do a daily record of the day. So I have a ton of vinyl I have this, I make myself lunch every day. When I work from home, I grab a record, I put in a record player, share that with the audience. So you can get involved in that if you want. I have a podcast as well. It's called Everything is Personal. You can get on YouTube, anywhere you get podcasts from. It's one of my passion projects. I love talking to interesting people. And then I have a book. It's called Making Cannabis Personal. You can get that on Amazon, wherever you get books. The thing that I got from this book that I got feedback on, people told me it's one of the best definitions that they read of the endocannabinoid system, explaining how that works in non-scientific terms as much as like my own terminology. So if anybody's interested in digging into that, and pick up the book. So that's pretty much it.
Awesome. I think I'll pick up that book myself and figure out more about the endocannabinoid system in 48 hours or less.
There you go.
Uh, as always, this has been Will Nemo, your host of the Doomer Bloomers All Truths Only podcast. We are everywhere you get your podcasts, Google, Spotify, YouTube. You can find me on X, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and I do have a TikTok. Not as active there as I probably should be, but that is life. Once again, Len, thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for your service. You've been super inspiring to me, and loved having you on my show. Peace for now, and namaste. Cheers.